Lily stood in the bustling airport terminal, the smell of coffee and pretzels lingering in the air. She scanned the crowd for her boss, Mr. Harrison, hoping he would arrive soon. It was a Monday morning, and the last thing she wanted was to be late for the big meeting. As she looked around, she noticed a man pacing anxiously. His face was tense, and he gripped a suitcase tightly in his hands. Lily felt a pang of compassion for him. She could see he was upset about something. But with her own worries grinding away in her mind, she shook off the impulse to approach him. Then finally, she spotted Mr. Harrison striding towards her. He wore his usual crisp suit, looking every bit the power player he was known to be. "Lily, sorry I'm late," he called out, his voice cut through the noise of the crowd. "It's okay, Mr. Harrison," she replied, trying to mask her own stress. As they walked towards the boarding gate, Lily couldn't shake the feeling of unease she'd felt when she first spotted that man. She glanced back, catching a glimpse of him backpedaling slightly, trying to get the attention of airport staff, but they brushed him off, their impatience palpable. She asked her boss, pointing discreetly. Harrison replied, his eyes locked on his phone, scrolling through emails. "Over there with the suitcase, he seems really upset," she explained, her voice laced with concern. Mr. Harrison barely looked up, probably just missing a flight. "People get stressed about that all the time. We have our own problems to deal with," he said, waving it off. Lily felt a little deflated by his dismissive tone but pushed it aside. They boarded the plane and Lily settled into her seat, trying to focus on the presentation ahead. But in the back of her mind, she kept thinking about that man. What if he was in real trouble? As the plane took off, her mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't help but wonder about the suitcase. Was it just luggage, or was it something more? It tugged at her thoughts throughout the flight. She was usually not one to get caught up in other people's issues, but this felt different somehow. After the meeting, which went surprisingly well for her team, Lily found herself wandering through the airport again, ready to head home. She still couldn't shake the image of the anxious man from earlier. As she walked through the terminal past shops and cafes, she heard a commotion near the baggage claim. The same man was there, looking destitute and desperate, frantically searching for something in his suitcase. Curiosity took hold, and Lily instinctively moved closer. She heard him pleading with an airport worker, "I have my entire life in there." His voice cracked with emotion, a raw edge that made her stomach twist. Lily found herself crossing the line between concern and involvement. She approached cautiously, unsure of what to say. She asked gently. He looked up, his desperation morphing into hope. "No, it's not," he replied, his voice trembling. "My suitcase was supposed to be right here, and it's gone. I need that bag. It has everything I own: my documents, my clothes." She stole a glance at the employees standing around, showing little empathy. She asked, wishing she could do more to help. "But they said there's nothing they can do. They just keep saying it's probably delayed. I can't wait. I need to start my new job tomorrow, and I don't even have a change of clothes," he said, exasperation dripping from his words. Lily felt an ache in her heart for this man. This was far more than a missing suitcase. This was someone's dream dangerously close to unraveling. She offered, surprised at her own willingness to get involved. He paused for a moment, uncertainty clouding his eyes. "I don't know. I don't even know how to reach anyone higher up," he admitted, looking defeated. Just as she was about to suggest they speak to a supervisor together, she saw a figure on the far side of the claim area. It was Mr. Harrison, standing with a suitcase that looked very much like the one the man had lost. "Wait," Lily said suddenly, the realization hitting her like a wave. She pointed at Harrison, heart racing. The man shifted his gaze. Confusion flickered in his eyes, then turned to alarm. "That's mine," he exclaimed, pointing. Lily, caught between shock and anger, felt her pulse quicken. She watched as Mr. Harrison approached, nonchalantly dragging the suitcase with him. "You've got to be kidding me," she murmured under her breath. Just at that moment, Mr. Harrison stopped, crouching down to inspect the luggage as if it were his. He looked up at Lily, and for a moment she barely recognized the expression on his face. It was one of annoyance, as if being questioned about the suitcase was beneath him. "Lily, this is mine," he said curtly. "I picked it up at the counter." The man surged forward, desperation painted across his features. "That's my suitcase. I don't know how you got it, but it's mine." Tension filled the air. Lily took a step closer to the two men. "Mr. Harrison, just check. There might be a mistake," she urged, her voice steady but pleading. Harrison shrugged, rolling his eyes. "It's probably just a lookalike. I've seen it all before." Lily's face burned with frustration. Her voice was more forceful now, carrying a weight she hadn't planned on. He snapped, but Lily wasn't about to back down. "If you could just look, it really is important," she pressed, shaking her head, feeling a fierce loyalty to the man in front of her. The tension surged, almost crackling like electricity. Mr. Harrison, sensing the challenge, stepped closer to the anxious man, his posture rigid. "I really don't have time for this. Please," the man said again, his voice trembling with emotion. "That suitcase, it's everything I own. I just came here for a fresh start." In that moment, something shifted in Lily. She remembered her own struggles starting out, moving to a new city, not knowing anyone. The nightmares of losing everything, the financial struggles, the shame, the stress, it all came flooding back to her. She saw Mr. Harrison starting to turn away again. That angered her. Mr. Harrison, you have a choice. Harrison glared at her, surprised by her sudden boldness. The man's eyes were wide, hopeful, hanging on her words. Fine, I'll look at the tag, Harrison huffed, his tone begrudging. He stepped closer and lifted the tag with a flick of his wrist, barely examining it before dropping it back down, but in that moment a shadow crossed his face. Uh-oh, wait, he said, a flicker of doubt creeping in. His smirk faltered as his brow furrowed. The man's heart seemed to leap at the truth hovering just above the surface. Please let me check the inside, he urged. Mr. Harrison hesitated. Just for a heartbeat, Lily thought she saw the gears turn in his head, but he ultimately sighed, tossing the suitcase toward the man. Fine, open it, he said dismissively. The man unclasped the suitcase with shaking hands, his heart in his throat, and slowly opened it. Inside, the contents seemed to confirm his worst fears. Clothes, a laptop, important documents all neatly folded. Everything he needed. Tears welled in his eyes as he stood, stunned. It's mine, he whispered, emotions pouring out of him like a flood. Thank you. Lily's chest tightened, and for a brief moment their eyes locked, understanding passing between them. She felt a rush of warmth, the kind that draws people together despite a world filled with indifference. But then she turned back to Mr. Harrison, who wore a sour expression. I didn't take it, he muttered, venom lacing his voice. And yet, you didn't even check. You could have cost him everything, Lily said, her heart racing. As they walked away, she felt both frustration and relief. She didn't know how Mr. Harrison would respond, but she felt a sense of clarity wash over her. Sometimes it took a push to wake people up to the power of empathy, to show them how dismissive attitudes could ruin lives. In that moment, as the man waved them away, a smile illuminating his face, Lily realized how crucial it was to stand up for others. It wasn't just about complaints being heard. Sometimes it was about fighting for those who felt invisible. She had made the choice to care, and that made all the difference. As she and Mr. Harrison walked toward their gate, silence fell between them, but Lily wasn't looking back anymore. She had chosen her path, and she felt stronger, full of a new fire. The airport bustled with chaos around her, but she had found something different to hold on to: courage, compassion, and a resolve to be a voice for those who needed it most. Lily stood frozen, her eyes wide as she watched her boss, Mr. Harrison, casually pull the wheels of a suitcase that didn't belong to him. The busy airport terminal around her faded into a blur, reality distorting as her mind raced to piece together what she was witnessing. One moment he was on the phone, the next he had just nonchalantly picked up the bag that she'd seen moments earlier in the frantic hands of a desperate man. "Excuse me," came a voice, shaky and filled with an urgency that sliced through the noise of the crowd. The sound jolted Lily back into focus. She turned to see a man rushing toward Mr. Harrison, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Lily's heart raced. She'd seen that man before. He was pacing near the check-in counter, a picture of anxious determination as he desperately argued with airport staff about his luggage. Seeing her boss walk away with the suitcase felt like a punch to the gut. How could Mr. Harrison, with all his power and status, so easily disregard someone else's struggle? In that moment, the world around Lily sharpened as adrenaline kicked in. She shouted, urgency flooding her voice. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew she had to intervene. Her words hung in the air, paused like a moment captured in time. Mr. Harrison paused, turning slowly, the annoyance on his face evident. He snapped, barely concealing the irritation in his voice. Lily moved closer, her heart pounding. "You can't just take that suitcase." She pointed at the man now scrambling toward them, desperation etched in every line of his face. "You need to stop," she insisted, her voice steady, even as she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down. For a brief moment there was silence. The man reached them, panting heavily as he stopped short, his eyes darting between Lily and Mr. Harrison. "It's my whole life," he gasped, his voice quivering with emotion. Lily felt an overwhelming wave of compassion for him. She could see the fear in his eyes, a fear that spoke of lost opportunities and dreams on the line. This was more than just luggage. This was everything a person owned, wrapped up in fabric and zippers. Despite the quickening pulse of the moment, Mr. Harrison's expression remained granite stone indifferent. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said dismissively, eyeing the suitcase like it had committed a crime. The man shook his head, frustration boiling beneath his surface. "No, that's my suitcase. I was right there when it came off the plane." His voice escalated with urgency, drawing the attention of a few nearby passengers. Lily felt the tension thickening the air around them. This was a classic standoff, a collision of indifference and desperation. She glanced at Mr. Harrison, searching for any sign of empathy in his cold demeanor. "Look, it's just a mix-up," he said, shifting his weight and practically rolling his eyes. What a sight that was, a man with power who lacked the will to step back for simple humanity. Lily countered, her voice rising, fueled by conviction. "This is a person's life." Mr. Harrison shot her a glance, irritation flashing in his eyes. "I really don't have time for this," he said, gripping the suitcase as if it were an anchor keeping him grounded. "But you can help him," Lily protested, her heart fluttering in her chest. She thought back to her own struggles, recalling every moment she'd felt unseen, every judgment passed without an ounce of compassion. The man stood there, his gaze shifting between them, hoping desperately for someone to stand up for him. His own face was a mask of panic as he pleaded, "Please, don't let me lose this opportunity. I just moved here for a job." Seeing the raw pain in his eyes made Lily's pulse race. Deep down, she understood that this wasn't just about the suitcase. It was about hope, vulnerability, and the courage to ask for help. "Mr. Harrison," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "you have the power to make this right. Just look, it doesn't take much." The firmness in her voice surprised even her, but she knew this was a moment that could shift the tides. Finally, Mr. Harrison's mask of indifference cracked, if only just a little. He hesitated, caught between duty and the rising tide of human empathy. But instead of relenting, he turned away, as if hoping the situation would simply resolve itself. "Do whatever you want. Just don't come crying to me if it turns out not to be his," he muttered, waving his hand dismissively as he started to walk away, dragging the suitcase behind him. Lily shouted, the desperation spilling out of her. She felt anger rise within her as Mr. Harrison strolled away, seemingly leaving a trail of hurt behind him. "Stop him," the man called after Mr. Harrison, his chest rising and falling wildly as he fought against panic. Lily stepped forward, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. "We can't let this happen," she said, her voice strong. The determination she felt surged within her like a fire. "I'll help you," she told the man, her mind racing. She had seen enough. It was time to take action. "Let's go to the lost and found together. They can help us track it down if it's here," she said, taking the man's arm gently. The man nodded gratefully, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Together, they maneuvered through the bustling terminal, weaving past families, business travelers, and others who seemed blissfully unaware of the high stakes unfolding around them. As they reached the lost and found, Lily felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. She called out to the attendant at the counter. "We need help. That suitcase right there belongs to this man." The attendant turned, eyebrows raised, but Lily pushed through. "It's an emergency." The urgency in her voice caught the attendant off guard as she nodded slowly. "Let me check," the attendant said, reaching for the suitcase. Just a few feet away, Lily could see Mr. Harrison still lingering nearby, tapping away on his phone, seemingly detached from it all. But she couldn't focus on him now. The world had narrowed down to the woman at the counter and the man beside her. Time felt suspended as the attendant examined the bag, her fingers deftly working to check the tag while the man stood shoulder to shoulder with Lily, his breath growing shallow. Yes, the attendant's approval sent a shockwave through Lily. Relief and joy intertwined in a moment of beautiful clarity. The man asked, eyes brightening with hope. "Yes, this suitcase belongs to you," she affirmed, handing it over. Lily watched as his hands trembled while reaching for the suitcase, the weight of despair lifting. He exclaimed, tears glistening in his eyes. In that moment, a rush of triumph flooded through Lily. She had stood up for someone, and it had made a difference. She turned to see Mr. Harrison still standing there, confusion etched on his face as if he couldn't fathom the exchange taking place. As they headed back to the boarding area, the man couldn't contain his gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, breathless with relief. "Just promise me this," Lily replied, her voice firm yet gentle. "When you get settled in, remember this moment." He nodded, a smile breaking across his face, radiant against the backdrop of all he had been carrying. "I promise." But just as they were basking in the glow of this small victory, Lily felt a throat clearing from behind. It was Mr. Harrison, stepping forward with a tight-lipped expression. He asked regarding both of them with an air of disdain. Lily's heart sank momentarily and she fought to keep her composure. She shot back. He couldn't unmake the good that had been done. "It's just a suitcase. You've wasted so much time," he replied, dismissing her efforts with a wave of his hand. "It's not just a suitcase," she said, feeling the familiar fire ignite once more. "It's someone's entire life. You dismissed it like it didn't matter." Mr. Harrison frowned, and for the first time, doubt flickered across his features. "I just thought that's the problem," Lily interrupted, her voice rising. "You assumed without listening. People matter, Mr. Harrison." With that, she turned her back on him, the man at her side beaming with appreciation. They walked together toward the departure gate, leaving behind the weight of indifference. As the airport buzzed with life around them, she felt lighter. In a world where so many were invisible, today she had made a choice to see, and that made all the difference. Now, as she faced the horizon of new possibilities, she felt invigorated, ready to embrace whatever came next. The busy airport terminal buzzed with people rushing to catch flights, voices blending into a constant hum of chatter and rolling luggage. In the middle of this chaos stood Sarah, her mind racing as she scanned the crowd for her boss, Mr. Thompson. She could already feel the weight of the impending meeting pressing down on her shoulders, and all she wanted was for everything to go smoothly. Just then, a loud voice pierced the din. "That's my suitcase," a man was shouting, his face filled with desperation as he hurried toward a figure at the baggage claim. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the man. He had been standing behind her in line, looking increasingly anxious as he glanced at the overhead display of arriving flights. He begged, practically sprinting towards Mr. Thompson. "You have to stop." Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized what was happening. Mr. Thompson, oblivious to the scene he was causing, was dragging the suitcase away. It was unmistakably the same bag that the man was shouting about. In that moment, everything felt suspended in time. The man's plead echoed in Sarah's mind, the urgency in his voice wrapping around her like a vice. But she stood frozen, unable to decide whether to intervene or stay out of it. "Just calm down," Mr. Thompson shot back, not even bothering to turn around. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up." "Mix-up," the man cried, desperation pooling in his eyes as he stepped closer, fear and anxiety churning behind his words. Rising indignation flared inside Sarah. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience, this was a man fighting for something that meant everything to him. How could Mr. Thompson disregard that? It pulled at her heart, igniting a fire she hadn't expected. "Mr. Thompson," she called, breaking her silence and rushing forward. He turned his head slightly, annoyance flashing across his eyes. She pointed, determination fueling her words. "Don't get involved, Sarah," he replied dismissively, his voice laced with irritation. But the man, his face pale and trembling, stepped closer, every ounce of his body screaming for help. "Please listen, that's everything I own, I just got here." Time seemed to stretch, the scene around them blurring as Sarah felt a mix of fear and rage boiling inside her. She couldn't believe how casually her boss was handling this. "Mr. Thompson, you need to check the tag." He rolled his eyes. "It's probably fine. I grabbed it at the claim area." He turned as if to walk away, leaving the man standing there, lost and vulnerable. But Sarah couldn't let that happen. "No, you don't understand. This isn't just luggage." Their audience grew. Other travelers had begun to notice, eyes darting between the man's pleading expression and Mr. Thompson's growing impatience. "Right," he said sarcastically, "because we all know how frequently people lie about luggage." Now Sarah's heart raced, fury blending with a sense of justice. This man wasn't just fighting for a suitcase, he was fighting for dignity, for a chance to start fresh. She stepped forward, fueled by the unwavering conviction of what was right. "I know it's true, I saw him just a few moments ago." The man nodded fervently, his eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you, just let me check, okay? It'll only take a moment," she pressed, her resolve palpable. Mr. Thompson seemed taken aback, his expression shifting as he hesitated. He said, though the irritation in his voice began to wane. Sarah shot back, her voice louder now, drawing the attention of more onlookers. The man stepped closer to Mr. Thompson, practically trembling in fear. "Please, sir, it's a new beginning for me." For a heartbeat, the tension hung heavy in the air. Sarah watched as Mr. Thompson's defenses slowly began to dissolve, uncertainty flickering across his face. "Fine," he sighed with an annoyance that felt more like a reluctant concession. He approached the suitcase, examining it with feigned nonchalance. "Just check the tag," Sarah urged, her voice steady and resolute, but her mind raced. He lifted the tag and froze, the color drained from his face. "Not really mine, the initials are wrong." The man's breath caught in his throat. Hope surged in his voice, almost fragile, like glass ready to shatter. "Yeah, this isn't my bag," Mr. Thompson admitted reluctantly, but the defensive tone still lingered in his voice. The man exclaimed, relief flooding his features as he reached out for the suitcase. But Mr. Thompson held it back, an eyebrow raised. "But it's still just a suitcase, you know," he said dismissively, as though they hadn't just uncovered something monumental. The man countered, raw vulnerability cracking through his voice. "It's not just belongings, it's my future." As Mr. Thompson stood there, Sarah felt the simmering indignation boiling once more. "It's never just a suitcase," she said firmly, meeting her boss's gaze with a challenge. "Don't you realize how many lives we touch every single day?" Mr. Thompson shifted, his posture tense, not quite sure how to handle the sincerity in her voice. "I moved here after losing everything," the man said, his voice dropping to a vulnerable whisper. "This is my chance." For a moment, Sarah could see a flicker of recognition in Mr. Thompson's eyes, as if the weight of understanding was beginning to settle in. "Okay," he finally said, almost reluctantly. He pushed the suitcase toward the man as if it were a hot potato. The man grasped it tightly, his eyes brimming with gratitude. He started, emotion hitching his breath. "Thank you." Laughter broke out from an onlooker in the crowd, easing the tension ever so slightly, but Sarah didn't feel triumphant. Instead, she turned toward Mr. Thompson, intent on emphasizing the lesson learned. "It's moments like this that remind us of who we really are," she asserted. "You have the power to help others when they need it most." He didn't respond right away, his expression shifting, muscles relaxing as the earlier annoyance faded. "I get that now," he finally said, finally softening his stance. The man nodded, wiping the tears from his eyes as he stood upright, once again drawing in deep breaths of gratitude. "Remember, compassion doesn't mean weakness," Sarah added, her voice unwavering. With that, they each exchanged knowing glances, a silent understanding passing among them. Mr. Thompson nodded, a glimmer of newfound respect shining in his eyes. "Let's get moving," he insisted, the earlier urgency palpable as they walked together towards the gate, leaving the crowd behind. The atmosphere shifted as they continued through the crowded terminal, bustling with life, the warmth of newfound empathy wrapping around them. Although Sarah felt her shoulders lighten, she knew actions spoke louder than words. As the man turned to thank them both one last time, Sarah could only smile, knowing this was a reminder to always choose compassion, no matter how busy life became. She witnessed how, in a world filled with chaos, all it took was one moment of courage to shift perspectives and ignite compassion. That was the power of understanding, the ability to see beyond oneself and embrace the shared struggles of humanity. As they boarded the plane, Sarah took a deep breath, the journey not just of miles, but of change ahead of them all. The bustling airport terminal was a swirling chaos of sounds, wheels rolling, announcements crackling over the intercom, and the hum of countless conversations blending into white noise. Lights flickered overhead as people rushed to catch flights, families hugged, and travelers typed away on laptops in the crowded seating areas. But amid this lively scene, a crisis was quietly unfolding. At the baggage claim, James stood hunched over, disbelief written all over his face. "Excuse me," he shouted, his voice sharp and urgent. The suitcase he was pointing at wasn't just any bag, it was the bag that contained everything he owned. He had just moved cities, ready to start a new job and a new life. But in a matter of moments, his world felt like it might unravel. His heart raced as he saw a figure walk away with the suitcase's suitcase. He pleaded, desperation flooding his voice. "You can't take that." The figure slowed but did not stop. It was none other than his boss, a tall, imposing man in a crisp suit. He called back, dismissing James with a wave of his hand. James's stomach twisted. "Sir." His voice cracked as panic set in. Strangers glanced at him, some with concern, some with annoyance, but no one stepped in to help. Sarah, standing nearby as a new hire working her first big project, witnessed the scene unfold. She'd been preparing for her own important meeting, trying to impress her boss. Yet against the backdrop of impatient travelers and rolling luggage, the frantic plea of the desperate man snagged her attention. "Mister," Sarah shouted, instinctively moving toward her boss. She felt a surge of urgency push her forward. Perhaps it was the sheer humanity of the situation that struck her deeply, or perhaps it was the fear that she might be letting something wrong go unchecked. "Sarah, stay out of this," Mr. Thompson replied, his tone dripping with annoyance as he turned back to her. His eyes narrowed, visibly irritated by her interference. But she started, her pulse quickening as she tried to formulate her thoughts. She had only been with the company for a short time, and the pressure to impress weighed heavily on her, thick like a fog. He snapped, visibly dismissing James's pleas as if they were nothing more than background noise. "But that suitcase," Sarah pressed back, her voice rising. She had to fight for this man, didn't she? Surely it wasn't just a pointless argument about luggage. Here was someone fighting for his life, his future. She watched as James's face twisted in desperation. "Please, sir, I just moved here for a job. That's everything I own in there." His voice tremored, teetering on the edge of breaking down. The energy in the terminal shifted. People started to pay attention, some even pausing mid-stride to watch the escalating drama. Sarah felt a swell of empathy for James, and it crushed her to stand by while her boss treated him like an inconvenience. "Mr. Thompson, you have to understand, it might not be just a suitcase to him," she implored. "I said no," Mr. Thompson growled, brushing her off with a flick of his wrist. James stepped forward, courage glowing in his eyes. "It's not just a suitcase, it's my dignity." His voice rose, desperation morphing into an overwhelming plea. Sarah felt a flame of resolve igniting within her. This was more than just about compassion, it was about standing up for what was right. "You can't just ignore him, sir." For a moment, silence enveloped them. James looked hopeful, and that flicker of hope pushed Sarah further. She realized she couldn't back down now, she had to do something. "Let's just check the tag," she suggested, urgency threading her words together. Mr. Thompson rolled his eyes, clearly exasperated. "Fine, just make it quick," he muttered, throwing the suitcase back toward James but leaving himself a safe distance away, as if afraid it might explode. As James rushed to inspect the bag, the anxiety in his expression was palpable. The suitcase opened with a familiar zip, and hope surged through Sarah. But as he pulled out the contents, a wave of cold reality hit. "This is it, just check the tag," he urged. As Mr. Thompson hesitated, the weight of the moment filled the space between them. Sarah watched as he squinted at the tag. She could see clear as day the shift in his expression, a flicker of realization. His eyes darted back to the man. He asked, stunned. The walls of authority he'd built crumbled just a bit. "Yes," James exclaimed, relief washing over him. But Mr. Thompson, still fighting to maintain control over the situation, cleared his throat. "Well, it's still just a suitcase," he replied, trying to act dismissive. James straightened up, disbelief clouding his features. "You should have listened to me." The air around them crackled with tension, and Sarah took another step forward, locking eyes with James. He didn't even check. Mr. Thompson shot her a warning glance, but she pressed on. "This is about being human, it's about respect, how we treat others matters." Quiet settled over them, and the crowd began to murmur. Some travelers, once indifferent, were now shifting their weight, eyes glued to the trio. Sarah could feel the eyes upon her, the collective breath of the crowd hitching in anticipation. Although Mr. Thompson was visibly annoyed, he faltered, shifting on his feet. "All right, fine." The dismissal felt half-hearted, and a wave of anger surged through Sarah. "No," she said firmly. "You can't dismiss it like that. You need to acknowledge the weight of what you did." James, still reeling from the whirlwind of emotions, nodded. "I just need a chance, that's all. I've lost so much already." Mr. Thompson's expression shifted. For once, he had to confront the reality of his actions, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw shame flicker across his face. But what if situations were reversed? Sarah continued, her voice steady but filled with conviction. What would you want someone to do? The moment hung in the air, an electric weight churning with possibility. Finally, something shifted within Mr. Thompson. I didn't realize, he muttered, glancing from James to Sarah. I get so caught up in the rush that I forget. James blinked in surprise, the weight of disbelief mingling with hope anew. Thank you. For the first time, Mr. Thompson seemed vulnerable, allowing the armor of authority to break. I'd like to help. If there's anything I can do to make this right, I will. Sarah felt a tingle of triumph as she stood beside James. James asked, a smile breaking across his face despite the weight of the moment. Yes, of course, Mr. Thompson said, extending a hand hesitantly yet open. As they closed the chapter of misunderstanding, Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her. This was the power of empathy, the ability to see beyond yourself and make choices that mattered. James accepted the handshake, his grip firm. I appreciate it. This has been a very emotional day, but I'm ready for what's next. They moved toward the terminal with renewed purpose, the weight of the situation lifting slowly but surely. Mr. Thompson walked beside Sarah, his demeanor having softened. I really do appreciate you standing up for him, he admitted, glancing sideways. It's not just about the business, you know, Sarah replied, her voice warm. It's about being compassionate. Mr. Thompson nodded and for the first time seemed to truly listen. Maybe everything could change with one moment of courage. As they made their way through the terminal, Sarah felt as though they were moving towards something larger, a shared understanding of humanity, connection beyond judgment, and compassion wrapped in grace. In that crowded airport, they'd witnessed a small miracle, the intersection of empathy and action. And with that, they stepped into a world of renewed possibilities, understanding they all had a choice in how they responded to life's challenges together. The airport terminal buzzed with life, a tapestry of voices and sounds weaving together in a lively chaos. Travelers rushed to their gates, mothers called to their children, and the smell of coffee and pastries hung thick in the air. Amid this frenzy, something began to unfold that would change several lives in a matter of minutes. At baggage claim, a man named Mark stood clutching his ticket, his expression growing increasingly frantic. "Excuse me," he shouted, reaching out as he spotted a figure dragging away a bag that looked like his. Panic and determination fought for dominance in his voice, drawing the attention of those nearby. As people turned to watch, Mark hurried closer to Mr. Bennett, his boss, a tall, imposing man in a sleek suit, oblivious to the scene unfolding behind him. "Sir, that's my suitcase." Mark's voice wavered, desperation leaking through each word. Mr. Bennett, already distracted by his phone, barely glanced back. "I don't have time for this," he replied curtly, dragging the suitcase further away. Mark felt his heart drop into his stomach. "Please, you don't understand." Tears sprang to his eyes as he thought of the fresh start he had packed away in that bag. Nearby, Sarah, a junior staff member working for Mr. Bennett, witnessed the scene unfold. She was waiting for her flight, her mind preoccupied with her upcoming presentation. But as she observed the frantic exchange, her heart twisted in empathy. She couldn't just stand by and let this happen. "Mister," she called out, racing forward. The panic in Mark's voice echoed in her mind, the urgency suffused by an aching seriousness that she could not ignore. "Sarah, just let it go," Mr. Bennett snapped without turning around, his shoulders stiff with annoyance. "It's not just lost luggage," Sarah argued, stepping alongside Mark with a determination she hadn't expected. Mark looked at Sarah, hope and desperation mingling in his eyes. "Please," he urged, breathing heavily. "You have to help me. That bag has my clothes, my documents. I just moved here for a job." Mr. Bennett remained unfazed, his focus still glued to his phone, dismissing both their concerns. He started walking away, leaving Mark on the edge of despair. Sarah pressed, but her words bounced off Mr. Bennett like a stone against a wall. "Life doesn't matter to me, kid," Mr. Bennett said coldly, his tone clipped. Mark's expression crumpled at the words, his shoulders slumping slightly as though all the air had been punched from his body. Sarah interjected, feeling the heat of rage flush through her. "This isn't just about luggage, it's about dignity." Mark nodded vigorously, desperation etched on his face. "That suitcase is everything I have, please." Mr. Bennett just waved his hand again, brushing them off like pesky flies. "I don't have time for this nonsense." With each dismissive word, Sarah felt more emboldened. The idea of standing by while someone fought for their identity lit a fire within her. You can't just walk away. Still, Mr. Bennett turned away, determined to move on, but Sarah took a deep breath and stepped in front of him. "Let's check the suitcase." For a moment, the world felt suspended in time. Mr. Bennett's expression became a mix of irritation and uncertainty. He hesitated and the tension was palpable. "Fine," he said finally, clearly annoyed but clearly realizing something was necessary. He approached the suitcase slower than before, suspicious, yet still keeping Mark at arm's length. As Mark moved closer, he felt his heart pounding in his chest. This was everything he had fought for, the one last thread tying him to the hope of a new beginning. He urged, "Mr." Bennett yanked open the suitcase and a mixture of confusion and anger coursed through him. He rifled through the clothes and personal items haphazardly. Sarah glanced at Mark, their eyes meeting in a shared connection. The weight of the world rested on this moment. "It doesn't look like anything special to me," Mr. Bennett muttered, still unwilling to fully embrace the moment. As he checked the tag, his brow furrowed, and for the first time, Mark felt the flicker of something close to hope. He shouted, trying both to convince Mr. Bennett and to reassure himself. A long pause filled the air, leaving everyone waiting with bated breath. Suddenly, Mr. Bennett's expression shifted from skepticism to realization. "Oh," he murmured, eyes widening with a mix of surprise and something akin to regret. The initials were unmistakably not his. "I told you," Mark's voice became a mix of triumph and desperation. As Mr. Bennett processed what had just happened, the atmosphere around them shifted. The passengers watching began to murmur, their curiosity piqued. Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline. Perhaps this was the turning point. Mr. Bennett set the suitcase down, his expression faltering. For a moment, as if the weight of his earlier dismissal pressed down heavily on him, he paused, stunned. "I didn't realize," he admitted quietly, almost begrudgingly, as if confessing a sin. Mark trembled with relief, extending his hands toward the suitcase, but Mr. Bennett hesitated again. "But it's still just a suitcase," he muttered defensively, still clinging to his authority. Mark exclaimed, brows furrowed in frustration, "It's my future." Sarah stepped forward, her resolve steeled. "This is crucial for him, don't you see? It's not just material." Mr. Bennett shifted, visibly uncomfortable. Maybe for the first time, he was beginning to see that his own viewpoint was limited. Facing Mark, he realized the hidden vulnerabilities of the man before him. Mark took a deep breath, his shoulders tightening as he spoke. "I risked everything to move here. That suitcase carries my hopes, dreams, and all my belongings. I can't afford to start from nothing again." The determination in his voice made Mr. Bennett frown, caught between the authority he always maintained and the revelation unfolding before him. Perhaps self-reflection stirred within him for the first time. In a world that often turned a blind eye to desperation, he began to ponder the intricacies of life, the small yet significant struggles that people faced daily. Seeing this man before him, a man who fought for what was rightfully his, triggered something deep within Mr. Bennett's heart. He started, pausing to gather his thoughts. The sincerity in his admission surprised both Sarah and Mark, bringing a flicker of hope. Realizing Mr. Bennett was finally willing to see beyond his own bubble of reality, Sarah felt a rush of warmth. "It's okay, sir, we all make mistakes." Mr. Bennett hesitated before extending the suitcase toward Mark. "Please take it. I hope you can forgive me for not seeing you," he said, the words heavy with intent. Mark's eyes sparkled, reflecting the challenges he had faced thus far. "Thank you," he said, emotions washing over him as he took the suitcase back into his hands. The moment felt electric, charged with uncertainties that faded as understanding washed over them. Sarah watched, heart swelling with pride, realizing that true change came from confronting our assumptions, opening our eyes to the experiences of others. As Mark started to gather himself, Mr. Bennett took a bold step forward. "If you need any assistance getting settled or starting your job, please reach out. I'll do what I can," he offered, his voice sincere. With the weight of burdens lifted and a newfound connection forged, Sarah felt the atmosphere in the terminal shift. It was as though a barrier had been broken. The invisible divides that often kept people apart were momentarily swept away. "I really appreciate that," Mark replied, his gaze steady. As everyone began to disperse, the air felt lighter. Sarah found herself beside Mr. Bennett, who seemed transformed, the hardened man softened by the vulnerability he had seen firsthand. "Thank you for standing up for him," he said, meeting her gaze with newfound respect. Sarah smiled, relieved that her intervention had resulted in something meaningful. "We all need reminders sometimes. Life is full of struggles." They walked together toward the exit, the weight of the entire afternoon nestled within their hearts. Mark, just ahead of them, walked with purpose, carrying not only his suitcase but a renewed sense of self. As they stepped into the busy airport world again, the experience felt like more than just an isolated moment. It was a connection formed, a reminder that compassion could break barriers and foster understanding even in the most chaotic of places. In that crowded terminal, they had witnessed firsthand how empathy could change lives, how one person's struggle could awaken another's conscience. They left the airport with different perspectives, but one shared understanding. In a world rushing forward, it was essential to pause, to see people, to honor their stories, and to respond with heart. Compassion was the small thread that tied them all together, weaving them into a greater tapestry of humanity. And as they stepped back into the whirlwind of life, they knew that this day had changed them all. The airport terminal hummed with life, an energetic blend of laughter, hurried footsteps, and the distant sounds of intercom announcements that echoed through the high ceilings. Among the chaos, a tall man with a tightly gripping suitcase stood waiting, unease etched on his face. His heart raced as he glanced around, anxiety growing with each passing moment. "That's my suitcase." The man's voice sliced through the din as he rushed forward, taking long strides toward a figure already striding away from the baggage claim. The figure was none other than his boss, Mr. Anderson, a man known for his sharp suits and sharper tongue. Mark, the frantic man, could hardly believe what he was witnessing. Mr. Anderson, oblivious to the storm brewing behind him, was dragging Mark's suitcase along as if it were just one more piece of luggage, nothing more than a mere object. Mark's heart sank. "Sir," he shouted, desperation spilling over as he sprinted to catch up. "That's my bag," but Mr. Anderson simply shrugged him off, his face still riveted to his phone. "I don't have time for this, Mark." As Mark's breath quickened, he could feel panic rising within him. "You don't understand. That bag has everything I own." His voice trembled as fear gripped him. Nearby, Sarah, a junior employee at the company, felt her chest tighten at the sight of the unfolding drama. She had just recently joined the team and found herself overwhelmed with the pressures of her new role. But something about the pleading look on Mark's face struck a deep chord within her. "Mr. Anderson," she called, rushing forward before she could think it through. He barked, finally turning his head, irritation etched across his features. She insisted, her heartbeat drumming louder, each beat driven by a sense of urgency. Mr. Anderson snapped, dismissing her words with a wave as he continued to drag the suitcase further away. "Please," Mark cried, desperation tinging his voice. The words echoed through the terminal, briefly halting the flow of hurried travelers. Some people stopped to look, their attention caught by the commotion. Sarah's stomach churned, and she recognized that Mark was very much in a fight for something far beyond material things. It felt like a battle for his dignity, his identity, his future. "Mr. Anderson," she pressed, her voice stronger now, "you need to understand that it's not just about the suitcase." But Mr. Anderson stood firm, his arms crossed defiantly. "Life isn't fair, Sarah." His dismissiveness only ignited Sarah's resolve. She shot back, eyeing the man as he struggled between looking hopeful and completely defeated. Mark looked to Sarah, his face full of anguish. "Please, I just need someone to believe me," he whispered, desperation filling his eyes. Feeling the weight of the moment, Sarah took a bold step forward. If she didn't act now, Mark might walk away with nothing. "Let's check the tag on the suitcase," she proposed. For a moment, Mr. Anderson hesitated. "Fine, just make it quick," he muttered, as if conceding to unspoken pressure. He approached the suitcase, annoyance still painted across his face. Mark felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the moment he needed. He nodded hopefully as he edged closer. The suitcase was promptly snapped open. It held a collection of clothes and a few personal items, nothing too out of the ordinary. Yet Sarah felt a knot tightening in her stomach. Would this prove to be just another crushing disappointment? As Mr. Anderson rifled through its contents, he glanced at the tag and his expression shifted. The initials didn't match his. Bewilderment began to wash across his annoyance. He murmured, eyes narrowing as he turned the bag. Mark's heart raced. "That's mine." The mixture of hope and fear blended in his voice. It seemed at last that Mr. Anderson was beginning to process the gravity of the situation. "Well, it's not mine," he muttered, looking even more perturbed. Mark urged, passion flooding back into his words. "It's everything I have, sir. I traveled across the country to start fresh." The silence that followed felt palpable, wrapping around them like a thick fog. As bystanders looked on, Sarah felt a flicker of something tension-filled in the air, a mixture of urgency and hope. "Just think," she said softly, "if you were in his shoes, wouldn't you want an ally?" Mr. Anderson faltered, visibly struggling with the whirlwind of emotions swirling around him. I didn't think like that," he finally admitted, moving the suitcase awkwardly to return it to Mark. Mark exclaimed, taking the suitcase back into his grasp as emotion surged through him. "Thank you." In that moment, relief flooded through Mark, but it didn't erase the tension. Sarah felt the tension shift, charging the atmosphere as Mr. Anderson stood there, caught between his authority and the startling reminder of humanity he had momentarily disregarded. "Maybe I should have listened," Mr. Anderson muttered, a hint of genuine remorse creeping in. Suddenly, the weight of responsibility began to settle on him. Perhaps he didn't have to be so indifferent. It was strange how moments like these could strip away facades, revealing something much deeper than surface-level interactions. "Everyone deserves a chance," Mark said with fervor, steam rolling behind his words. Mr. Anderson stared blankly for a moment as if trying to reconcile the lesson he had just learned. "I'm sorry for moving too quickly," he finally added, his voice falling low and sincere. Mark smiled, the weight on his shoulders lightening slightly, a flicker of hope breaking through the haze of confusion. "Thank you for seeing me," Mark said, gratitude shining through his eyes. Sarah stood by, a gentle smile lighting her face, relieved and proud of the path they had forged together through this situation. It was moments like these that connected people, igniting chains of compassion that went far beyond simple encounters. As the unsaid words lingered, Mark finished gathering himself, feeling emboldened by the unexpected support. "I'll reach out for guidance if I need help," he promised, looking between Mr. Anderson and Sarah. The moment marked a clear transition, not just the return of a suitcase but the transformation of perspectives, a shared bond formed in adversity. Mr. Anderson glanced at Sarah, the respect in his eyes unmistakable. "Thank you for speaking up," he said, sincerity filling his tone. The world around them resumed its chaotic rhythm, travelers rushing past, yet they stood still, anchored by their newfound understanding. It was a fleeting moment in time, but one that resonated deeply with all present. As they all walked together toward the terminal exit, the sun filtered brightly through the glass doors, illuminating each of their faces. It signified new beginnings, the promise of change, how small acts of kindness can ripple out in ways you might never expect. "I can't believe how quickly everything turned around," Mark said with a hint of gleeful disbelief. "Sometimes all it takes is one person to care," Sarah replied, her heart light as air, buoyed by the connection they had made. In their exchange of smiles, they left behind the worries of the day, knowing they had redefined not only a journey but the notion of compassion itself. As they parted ways, each of them carried a new story within them, a reminder that even amid chaos, humanity could prevail. The airport felt different upon their departure, an echoing affirmation that every action rippled outward, forming connections that could transcend the ordinary. With a final glance at each other, they stepped into the chaos of the world, embracing the boundless possibilities ahead. Mark felt an electric spark of hope. Life was a mixture of unknowns, but perhaps it could also be filled with kindness and capability. In that moment, everything converged into an understanding that remained out of frame. The threads of shared struggles could create a tapestry of resilience, illuminating the path forward. Together, they had turned a moment of dismissal into a victory of connection, showcasing the essence of what it truly meant to be human. The airport terminal buzzed with life, a symphony of voices and footsteps blending into a vibrant hum. Travelers hurried past, wheeling suitcases and cradling coffee cups, all lost in their own worlds. Among them was Anna, a young corporate worker with the burden of a looming presentation weighing heavily on her shoulders. She stood with her phone in hand, scrolling through emails, preparing for her day. Then the air shifted sharply. "Excuse me," a frantic voice erupted from the baggage claim area. Anna blinked, her concentration broken. She lifted her gaze just in time to see a man, disheveled and out of breath, sprinting toward a figure dragging a suitcase that wasn't his. "Stop!" The man's voice crackled with desperation, pulling the attention of everyone within earshot. Anna's heart sank as she recognized the figure. It was her boss, Mr. Lawson, a man known for his cutting remarks and rigid demeanor. He walked like he owned the world, casting a long shadow on everyone around him. Mark, the panicked man, closed the distance, nearly colliding with Mr. Lawson. "Sir, that bag is mine." Mr. Lawson barely glanced at him. "I'm late for a meeting and I don't have time for this nonsense," he replied dismissively, tugging the suitcase closer as if it were nothing more than an inanimate object. Mark's voice trembled, his desperation mounting. "That bag has everything I own. I just moved here for a job." Anna's pulse quickened. She saw the anguish on Mark's face. This was not just luggage, this was his hope, his future. Panic began to ripple through her, and a voice within her urged her to act, to intervene. "Mister," she called out, pushing through the crowd, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. The urgency in her voice caught both men by surprise. Lawson snapped, irritation flashing in his eyes. He had the audacity to roll them as if dismissing a child. Anna insisted, planting her feet firmly on the ground. Mark wore an expression of pleading hope. "Please, sir, I need my suitcase." Lawson shifted his weight, still unwilling to fully engage. "I don't have time for this nonsense. People lose bags all the time," he said, waving dismissively as if it were all a minor inconvenience, not the potential loss of someone's entire life. "No, this is not just losing a bag." Anna felt the words spilling out, her heart racing as emotion surged. "He deserves your attention." Mark stood frozen, his heart pounding in synchronicity with Anna's conviction. "I just moved my whole life across the country." His voice cracked, desperation swirling around him like a storm cloud. Anna's spirit ached for the man fighting for his possessions. She turned to Mr. Lawson, feeling tenacious. She pressed. "You're a leader," Lawson barked, his patience waning. "Would I care about a suitcase?" Anna's voice lifted with urgency, fueled by the heat of injustice. "It's his problem, and as his boss, you should at least show some compassion." Mark's eyes locked on Lawson, the anger simmering beneath his fear, threatening to break free. "You're treating it like trash, and it's not." "Calm down," Lawson snarled, tossing Mark a glance filled with disdain. Life isn't always fair. But Anna felt something shift deep within her, a bolt of electricity coursing through her veins. This was bigger than just a suitcase. It represented more than belongings. It was about humanity, empathy, and the choices people made every day. "Mr. Lawson, this isn't just a job opportunity for him," she argued, her voice rising above the noise of the terminal. Lawson hesitated again, annoyance flickering in his eyes, but Anna pressed on. "Just look at him." The tension crackled between them, and for the first time, Lawson hesitated, caught somewhat off guard by the fierceness of Anna's determination. It tugged at the edges of his stoic nature. For a moment, a reminder of what it meant to be human flitted across his features. He snapped, clearly exasperated but recognizing the mounting pressure of the crowd. Mark looked as if he had been handed a lifeline. "Thank you," he called out, his voice tinged with a fragile hope. As Lawson approached the suitcase, Anna felt the gravity of the moment. She watched him unzipping it, hope and fear warring within her. Please let this be the moment, she whispered to herself. Mark stepped forward, trying to pick up the pieces of his shattered narrative. Everything's in there. Lawson rummaged through the contents, taking out a few articles of clothing and looking considerably less than impressed. It just looks like a bag of junk. Sounded skeptical, latching onto his dismissive attitude like a lifeline. Mark's heart sank, but Anna wasn't ready to give up yet. It's important because it's his. It doesn't matter what's inside. What matters is the significance of what he's fighting for. A glimmer of recognition flickered across Lawson's face as he pulled out the tag, scrutinizing it closely. Anna could feel the tension shift, the air thickening with potential. Wait, Lawson muttered, brow furrowing with dawning realization. These initials. Yes, exclaimed, the floodgates opening. Lawson's expression changed, the annoyance draining away. For the first time, he actually saw Mark, the worry etched deep in his features, the fighting spirit simmering just beneath the surface. I'm sorry, Lawson finally said, his voice subdued. Thank you, Mark breathed, voice shaky with a mixture of relief and gratitude. But Lawson didn't stop there. Seeing Mark's fear change into hope, he felt something shift within himself. I should have recognized that. Mark nodded, still holding his suitcase tightly. It's okay. That doesn't mean it's right, Anna added gently. She felt a warmth blooming in her chest, proud of both men for reflecting on their choices. As Mark took his bag and began to regain his composure, Lawson seemed to grapple with the newfound weight of humility. I'll do better, he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Mark looked up, eyes shining. Thank you. Stepping away, Anna felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. Compassion can change everything, she said quietly, the moment wrapping around them like a shared blanket. As they walked together toward the terminal exit, a wave of other travelers had dispersed, oblivious to what had just occurred. Yet the three of them knew something significant had unfolded, perhaps a lesson in humility or a powerful reminder of the necessity of kindness. Mr. Lawson had not just returned a suitcase, he had rediscovered a sense of responsibility wrapped in the human experience. Anna felt grateful she had been brave enough to act, to challenge the status quo when it mattered most. Mark, no longer a confrontational figure, now stood taller, a fresh fire igniting inside him. Renewed motivation flooded his spirit, and he smiled. Thank you both. As Lawson nodded, a newfound respect lingered in the air, a quiet understanding passing between them. But Anna lingered back, reflecting on the experience that connected them all. Life can be challenging, she said softly, feeling the warmth of solidarity. We all have our struggles, big and small. The weight of their shared experience created a bond. They stepped back into the world outside, where travelers swirled around them, each immersed in their own journeys. Yet they knew, even within the chaos of life, that compassion could be a beacon of hope. As they parted ways, Mark glanced back, gratitude shining brightly in his eyes. He felt renewed, empowered by the reminder that he didn't have to fight alone. He called out, the warmth of the moment echoing in his voice. Anna smiled, the day cementing itself as not just another day in the airport, but a marked transformation in their lives. They each carried forward a story and a new lens through which they would view future encounters. Mr. Lawson took a deep breath, and with battle weariness lifting off of him, he glanced at Anna, a silent promise lingering between them. Thank you, he said sincerely, and for the first time she believed he truly understood. In that airport filled with countless souls, they had all emerged a little bit stronger, a little bit kinder, and forever changed by the simple act of listening and standing up for one another. The air in the bustling airport terminal was thick with the smell of coffee and the murmur of travelers discussing their plans. It was a typical Friday morning, filled with excitement and anticipation. But in the midst of all the noise, an unexpected scene began to unfold that would grip everyone nearby. Stop! The frantic voice echoed through the terminal, cutting through the din and snapping heads around to see what was happening. Mark, a man in his 30s with wild hair and an old sweatshirt, sprinted toward a figure dragging a suitcase. The figure was none other than his boss, Mr. Jenkins, a tall man in a tailored suit who seemed completely unfazed by the commotion. He snapped without breaking stride, his focus locked on his phone. Mark's jaw tightened as he approached, panic coursing through his veins. You don't understand, that suitcase has everything I own. His voice broke, a mix of desperation and fear spilling into the air. Anna, a junior employee at the company and standing nearby, felt her stomach twist with concern. She was preparing for her own flight home, but the urgency in Mark's voice struck a chord. She had seen him struggling over the last few weeks, doing everything he could to fit in at the new job. Mr. Jenkins, Anna called, pushing through the crowd toward them. The nature of her thoughts shifted from her own worries to the man in distress. She didn't think she acted. Mr. Jenkins replied, irritation creeping into his tone as he finally glanced up. His dismissive attitude was palpable, a wall built from years of arrogance. She insisted, breathing heavily as she stepped closer. Life isn't fair, Mr. Jenkins replied, shrugging her off with a wave of his hand. He turned away, tugging the suitcase as if it were just another piece of luggage. Anna felt a surge of anger bubbling inside her. Mark was nearly in tears, energy lost as his hopes seemed to fade. She couldn't let this happen, he shot back, clearly annoyed. Mark stepped forward, desperation coloring his face. It does involve her. Your job is to help people, not just ignore them. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. The surrounding people began to pay attention, drawn to the sad little showdown. Discussion stalled, the crowd shifted, leaning in to hear this explosive exchange. Without thinking, Anna stepped between them, a fire igniting within her. "You need to understand," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "That suitcase isn't just luggage, it's his life, his dignity. He deserves your help," Jenkins said, folding his arms defensively. There was a moment of tension, thick and heavy like a fog, because everyone deserves compassion no matter the circumstance, Anna urged, feeling the collective gaze of the onlookers digging into her. Mark's eyes were a mix of raw despair and flickering hope. "Please, sir." His voice cracked but remained steady. Anna could feel the walls closing in around them. The sound of people bustling about faded into the background. She was not going to walk away from this. It felt like a boiling point, one that could lead to something powerful. Finally, with a reluctant sigh, Mr. Jenkins moved closer to the suitcase, still dragging it slightly. "Fine, let's just check the damn bag," he grumbled, annoyance lining his features. Mark felt a rush of adrenaline as Jenkins unzipped the suitcase, the tension palpable among those watching. Clothes tumbled out awkwardly and Mark held his breath, praying for this to go well. Mark urged, hope flooding his voice. The initials. As Jenkins rifled through the bag, his brow furrowed in concentration. It felt like an eternity as the crowd collectively held its breath. Then he pulled out a shirt and for an instant looked bewildered. He asked, frustration creeping in. He turned the shirt inside out, still visibly uninterested, but in that very moment something shifted. Mark insisted, almost shouting now, his heart racing. The necessity of this moment weighed around them, a dense fog of emotions. Jenkins snapped the zipper, peering inside. This is just a bag, but Mark's hope didn't waver. Then, for the first time, Jenkins glanced at the suitcase tag. He murmured, tightening his grip as he registered the initials. Mark leaned closer, breathless. "Those are mine, can you see?" Mr. Jenkins finally looked thoughtfully at Mark, the tiniest flicker of understanding igniting in his eyes. "Yes," Mark exclaimed, feeling as if the air was rushing back into his lungs. Even amidst that chaos, Anna felt a quiet eruption of joy. It was a small victory, but a necessary one, a reminder that compassion could change lives. Jenkins took a step back, his bravado flickering. Though annoyance lingered, a thread of humility softened his features. "Look, I didn't know," he muttered, his voice faltering. Mark stared at him, bewildered. "Thank you for finally seeing me." As Jenkins stood there, the gravity of the moment seemed to weigh heavier. The people surrounding them began to murmur, reactions pulsing through the crowd. Some supported Mark, others shook their heads in disbelief at Jenkins' behavior. "I should have listened," Jenkins admitted, raking a hand through his hair. But the moment of vulnerability quickly began to dissolve. "Still," he continued, attempting to regain control, "why should I care?" "No," Anna interjected, her voice steady and strong, fueled by the momentum of their encounter. "It's proof of what he's been through, the challenges he faced." Mark nodded, hope glistening in his eyes. "Thank you, Anna." Jenkins looked uncomfortable, almost like a man being cornered. "Look, fine, take your bag, but the seeds of change had been planted." The initial anger of Mark, the dismissiveness of Jenkins, and Anna's courage had fused into something tangible. They were no longer just strangers caught up in an airport. They were three people confronting life in its rawest form. As Mark hugged his suitcase tightly, words danced at the edge of his lips. "You don't need to scream for people to see you." As the crowd began to disperse, a moment of clarity dawned on Jenkins. "I'm sorry for how I acted," he said, seemingly humbled. But before Mark could respond, a commotion erupted from behind them. An airport security officer approached, eyes wide with concern. The moment shifted into a new direction as the crowd turned back to watch. Anna's heart raced again, now unable to anticipate what was unfolding. Jenkins, caught off guard, quickly tried to regain his authoritative grip. Nothing. He shot at the officer, clearly fumbling his words. "Significant enough to get my attention," the officer replied sharply, eyes narrowed. Mark asked, taken aback. "I was just..." The officer countered, looking directly at Jenkins. Jenkins' steadfastness began to crumble under scrutiny. "Not at all," he stammered, looking more vulnerable by the second. Mark felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. "I was just trying to get my bag back," he explained, his voice wavering slightly. Anna could feel her heart racing. Everything they had fought for in those brief moments was on the verge of unraveling. A huge crowd was now forming, eyes fixed on them. Tension hung in the air like a storm about to break. The officer asked, Mr. Jenkins' brow raised, voice authoritative. The atmosphere thickened, the stakes felt higher. Anna took a steadying breath, realizing this was far from over. Would their victory over the suitcase dissolve into a mess of accusations? Would Mark's plea for dignity fade into a chaotic scene? Caught between the power dynamics and the genuine plight of Mark, the three of them now stood on a precipice, teetering at the edge of an uncertain outcome. Anna's eyes met Mark's, determination radiating between them as they faced the mounting tension. "We just wanted to do the right thing," she whispered. They were standing on the edge of change, the unfolding drama teetering precariously, ready to plunge them into whatever would come next. The next moments hung in the balance, each decision echoing beyond the airport walls, a crossroads for compassion, authority, and the powerful stories we carry.